this is Kevin Donahue with Protiviti, welcoming you to a new edition of Powerful Insights. It's time for internal audit leaders and professionals to stand up and ride their own wave of transformation and innovation. But the results of the latest internal audit capabilities and needs survey from Protiviti show that much progress still needs to be made in growing competency levels and next-generation auditing methodologies, in advancing innovation and transformation initiatives, and in communicating with audit committees. I had the pleasure of speaking recently with Brian Christensen to talk more about the results from this global research. Brian is Executive Vice President, Global Internal Audit for Protiviti. Now, while I've interviewed Brian many times, this actually is the second time we've recorded this particular podcast. The first time we did it in March, just before the full onset of the COVID-19 global pandemic. Given everything that's transpired in the world, I wanted to get Brian's fresh take on this year's results, how internal audit and their organizations have been affected by the pandemic, as well as their plans for the path forward. Brian, thanks for joining me today.
Great to be with you again, Kevin.
So, Brian, I want to dive into the results of our study, but first I wanted to ask you kind of about the elephant in the global room today, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. We conducted this survey last December, and we planned to release it in March. We put those plans on hold given everything that was happening in the world. What is your view right now and what you're seeing in the market, kind of some changes internal audit is looking to address and for their organizations and how they're managing through this change and maybe planning their way forward?
Yeah, Kevin, it's a great start and preamble to our capabilities and needs survey. As you know, each year annually, we try to release that in conjunction with the General Audit Management Conference put on by the IA. And as you said, we did the survey in December and really we're looking forward to bringing the results forward at that conference in March. And that was really the peak of when activity started taking place, as maybe many members of our audience were going to be attending or participating in that conference, and suddenly it was canceled. I think as we look today with a rearview mirror, the concepts that we talked about have really become more relevant, and that's interesting because I think what's transpired is internal audit organizations around the globe are really being asked to take a hard look at themselves and what can they do to bring value and what is relevant. And I think, our waiting to kind of see what's transpired from COVID, and we really do hope that everyone that's out there listening to this, that their family and their businesses and all the people that interact with are safe and taking care of all the things they need to do. But we really brought forward that next gen concept and even maybe some of the office of the future, of which we talked pretty extensively in our survey.
Let's dive into some of these highlights, findings from our study. We asked internal audit leaders, CAEs, and respondents to rate their competency levels and in general how they're prioritizing development of next generation internal audit capabilities. Now, overall, what we saw wasn't really great news. They don't seem to be advancing in their skill sets or prioritizing them appropriately. Do you agree with that?
I do, Kevin. It's interesting from the survey results and talking with people. I think there was an early adopter mentality. There were certain chief audit executives and departments that really embraced the use of the new tools, technology, methodologies to really advance what they could do to serve the stakeholders that they work with every day. And what we've seen over the years is there was a steady group there, but we seem to have hit this plateau where a number of people aren't pushing that ball forward. And that's disconcerting in several respects, because I think the auditors of today are really being asked of how can you bring value to serve those stakeholders. And I think an ancillary benefit to advancing your department is really attracting talent and recognizing that you're taking and doing some of the cutting edge things that are really a required part of the tool set for the auditors to succeed today. So I think the marginalization we've seen, or a plateau as it might be referred to additionally, is disconcerting. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us as someone that's a stakeholder in the profession. I want to see us taking those leaps forward. And I think it really resonates in the survey. We can't stop and rest on our laurels, but need to continue advancing.
And Brian, one point on that I find interesting, I know I've heard you speak of this before, Internal audit leaders, CAEs, even internal audit professionals even, should be looking to do this even if no one is asking them necessarily among their different stakeholders. Wouldn't you say that's correct?
That's absolutely right, Kevin. I think, one of my bully pulpits is we as leaders, with the responsibilities we have day to day to the companies, to the organizations we serve, we need to bring the very best forward. And if you compare ourselves to any other profession or vocation, no one ever says, give me those old things that we've tried time and time again. We're looking for the new technologies, such things as advanced data analytics, machine learning, the use of robotic process automation, getting into aligned assurance. All these topics that fit within what we refer to as the next gen wheel are exciting, and they bring value at the end of the day. And that's one of the questions, Kevin, I get when we talk about the results of the survey and interacting with people. They say, well, how do I bring value? Well, value is bringing insight and knowledge. And the things that we talk about here in this survey and around the next gen wheel really provide a means to do that for the auditor.
And Brian, another point you raised I wanted to have you elaborate on regarding team members and giving them opportunities. We make what I think is a very good point in our report about this, especially for people looking for challenges, these types of opportunities. Moving into these next generation internal audit concepts is important. What will happen if leadership does not give their people these types of opportunities to be innovative?
Well, I think, Kevin, the workforce that many of us lead today, we're seeing they want new demands. They want new challenges. They don't want the steady state of the same thing year over year. And we as internal audit professionals have a tremendous opportunity to do that. I think a great example I talked to is just in recent years, we've seen people that historically we'd only hire accountants or audit majors off of college campuses around the globe. And then we saw the advent of data scientists. But today we're really getting into seeing skills where people have a variety of capabilities to demonstrate these things. But they've also got critical thinking and decision-making skills that make them a really important part. Are they out there with the ability of these tools to assist them interacting with people, learning the business, doing the things? And I think these competencies are absolutely critical. You look at the things that people are dealing with, whether it's cyber, enterprise risk, now we're talking about business resiliency in the COVID era. These are a multitude of skills that just can't be learned under one particular discipline. So I'm optimistic that those that embrace this and really look to a holistic model of the skills on their team can provide a bright light for people to pursue. And I think it's one of the shining lights that we have within the profession at the present time.
And another point I wanted to bring up, maybe looking more on the bright side here, we've talked about some of the areas for improvement that internal audit functions have. But one of our findings showed that while fewer internal audit groups appear to be undertaking some form of innovation or transformation, the maturity of those efforts and those capabilities that are underway appears to have increased. Now, what does that tell you?
Well, I think it tells us that people are exploring to do new things. And I think one piece of material that I would offer here that I learned from is when you see people going through design thinking or ideation exercises, which is becoming more prevalent as we try to innovate in all aspects of what we do. When you embrace team members to do that, there is an opportunity for them and they see what they can do. And the organizations that are doing that really bring in more insight and learning and value. I keep talking about the value component. An auditor that just shows up with a report doesn't really bring that value unless it's tied to the business and can see where it's there. And I know during this period of COVID, we've seen lots of examples of companies I've worked with or feedback I'm hearing where people are setting down their pens, the proverbial pens maybe, of what they've done in the past, are being asked to do new challenges, and they're rising to that occasion. And I think that's the exciting part, when you combine people who are ambitious, that can take risks, to do new things, with the things we talk about in Next Gen. That's what gives me the excitement for tomorrow in our profession.
I want to remind those of you listening that you can find our report exploring the next generation of internal auditing at protiviti.com/IA survey. So, Brian, one final question for you. From the perspective of the audit committee, the group that obviously internal audit is reporting to regularly, What is their view, or how are they looking at next generation internal audit practices? Our survey suggests they want their CAEs to be leveraging these types of skills and capabilities more and communicate in that type of manner as well.
Kevin, this is one of my favorite questions to receive, and it's a great one to wrap up our call with today. What I hear from audit executives is oftentimes they feel reluctant to try to push that envelope to do something new and different. And one of the tidbits I offer as an example is, can you go to your audit committee and share one or two examples, or maybe you've put in a robotic process automation around a control, or another way to gather insight from that RPA into the business. As soon as you can start to demonstrate you're putting in some forward-looking tools and mentality, it starts to create a vortex of they just want more. And I think audit committees typically consist of really smart executives that want to know, is there something we can do to really help the business? And audit executives and audit teams that do that really are on the path to success, because what typically happens is they don't say stop. They say, what else can you do? Can you do some more of this? And I think that's the exciting piece of what all this is, Kevin, is we have that capability. We're seeing it every day, but everyone needs to take that first step. And I would encourage people to do that. A lot of those steps are described within our report, and I really appreciate being with you again today.
This was a great conversation yet again, Brian. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Kevin.
I want to thank Brian for joining me today to discuss the results of Protiviti's latest Internal Audit Capabilities and Needs Survey. For more information and to read our report exploring the next generation of internal auditing, please visit protiviti.com/IA survey, where you will also find our infographic, video, and other informative content. And finally, I encourage you to subscribe to Protiviti's Powerful Insights podcast wherever you find your podcast content.